Hi everyone, happy spring. I know it's been a while since I made a new video, so I thought that I would do that today. The idea that I had for today was a video on how to get into reading classics and some suggestions for places that you could start. I know that most of us probably read a lot of classics in high school and stuff and probably turned you away from reading them. I mean, maybe some people loved reading them in high school, but I know that I didn't. And only in the past couple of years have I started reading more classics, and it's by no means the majority of my reading, but I do enjoy reading them, and I found some tips that have helped me enjoy them more and find the right ones to read. And then also I just want to share ones that I've loved with you all. And I also want to give a disclaimer that as I was compiling this list, I realized that it's not a very diverse list in terms of different ethnicities or we're just from different countries. It's mostly from the US and a couple from the UK and things like that. So I do want to give that disclaimer that, you know, what is considered a classic is mostly usually a Western centric view. And there's definitely classics in all types of literature, but literature from everywhere, but I haven't really read much from those places, so I don't really have recommendations for you, but I do think that it's important to broaden your horizons, and that's definitely something that I'm trying to do. As I've mentioned before, I'm trying to read a book from every country. That can be a classic, it can be a modern book, it can be whatever. So I don't necessarily have too many classics suggestions. And for the purpose of this, I chose books that were at least 50 years old. It's kind of the arbitrary threshold that I made up in my mind. But with that disclaimer in place, let's get into my suggestions and recommendations. So the first kind of tip that I have is to pick short books. Pick something that isn't going to take you very long to read, isn't a big time commitment. If you don't like it, oh well, it's only, taking up a little bit of your time. And it just can give you a taste without having to invest too much into it. And I really like novellas for that. And so two that I've read recently are The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, which is a story that probably a lot of people are familiar with. And yeah, that's a novella. I think it was like under 100 pages, and so it was really quick to read. And another one is Carmilla by Sheridan Fanu. And that is a vampire story, and that's also a novella under 100 pages, or maybe slightly over. And so reading those kind of shorter stories is a great way to quickly, test something out and not have to commit too much into it. And both of those novellas are actually the only two books on this list that were written before the 20th century. Because personally I find that obviously the older a book is, the more difficult it is to relate to, at least for me. And so if I do want to read something that's a little bit older, I tend to lean even more heavily into a shorter book because I just don't have the stamina to be reading in, a way that most people wouldn't write today. Obviously something that's written over 100 years ago is just not going to be similar to what we're writing today, even if you can fully understand it. It just takes more effort. And so yeah, I think short books are great for that. And yeah, my next general suggestion is just to read books written in the last 100 years or so. I think that everything else on this list was. And that just makes it more accessible. Obviously, the writing style is going to be more similar to what we are used to with anything coming out in recent years. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different, but it's just more accessible and easier to read. And yeah, I have a few suggestions for that. One is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I think this is a very well-known novel about a young woman who is going through life changes and a mental health crisis. And yeah, I think this was written in the 60s. And so when I was reading it, I found it very easy to read, very easy to connect with, because it is a newer book, and it doesn't have some of those, words and grammatical styles that I'm not used to. And it's just a relatable story, so that's one. Another one along a similar theme is one that I just finished, called Nada by Carmen Laforet. And I don't think that this book is super popular. It's a book from Spain, and it is along a similar theme of a young woman who is coming of age and going out into the world and experiencing life on her own. And yeah, again, like another relatable theme also. That would be another tip that I have, read about somebody who is, maybe in a similar place in life as you, or from, your region, even if it's from 100 years ago, you can find something to relate to in the book. And so that's another suggestion that I have. Two more that were written in the last 100 years are Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. That's also under 200 pages. And that's about a closeted gay man in Paris and somebody that he meets, and kind of their relationship, and how they handle that. And obviously being in the LGBT community was not really widely accepted until very recent years, and still isn't in some cases, and so it mostly grapples with that theme, and that was a really great book as well. And then another one is Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut Jr., and that is a satirical book that deals with war and just the struggles and the ironies and everything like that, and it's very funny, as well as definitely dark humor. But yeah, that's another one that I really enjoyed, and those were all written in the 20th century, and I found them all very accessible and compelling and pretty easy to read. And another tip that I have is to find a genre that you're interested in and read a classic from that genre. So one genre that I really like is mysteries, and so I've read a few Agatha Christie novels in the past few years, and those are super fun to read. There might be, as with all of these, like when you're reading a classic, sometimes there's some dated language or themes that you have to deal with, and I've especially found that in Agatha Christie's novels, but at least in the ones that I've read, it hasn't been super prevalent, and I've been able to get past it. But that is just something to be aware of and expect when you are trying to read an older book. But her books are just so compelling. Obviously, they're murder mysteries, and they're just really fun to read. They're easy to read, and she writes in very clear, plain language, that you're not, laboring over what does this mean or anything like that. And so I really enjoy her books, and then There Were None is probably my personal favorite, but those are just really quick reads. So if you like mysteries, maybe look for one of her books or another classic mystery author. Another genre that I'm not super into but have been reading more of is horror, and I recently read The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, and I also watched the TV show of that, and so that definitely, you know, helped me understand a little bit. But I think that was written in the 60s as well, so really not that long ago. And yeah, it was just really cool to read, a classic in a genre that I enjoy. It was a compelling story, and so if you know that you like a certain genre, and looking back for a classic on that can definitely make it more easy to relate to. One last suggestion that I have for this is True Grit by Charles Portis. This is a classic Western, and it was a really fun book to read. It's about a young girl, and her father is murdered, and she is trying to apprehend the guy that did it. And since the main character is I think she's like 12 or something, a young girl, it's very easy to read. You know, she's obviously speaking in a way that's, you know, very understandable. And so that was a really fun book, and a classic in the Westerns genre. It is a Western. So yeah, that's just another tip that I have, and those were all great books and also on the shorter side as well. So I love sticking to short books regardless of whether they're classic or not. And then the last tip that I have is to read a classic children's book, because a lot of times children's books can still be enjoyable as an adult, like Harry Potter, for example. So I think that just because it's a kid's book doesn't mean it should be discounted as having literary merit or even just being an enjoyable reading experience as an adult. So two of my favorite classic children's books are Little Women by Louisa May Alcott and Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. I reread both of those in the past couple of years, and it was just really fun to revisit a book from my childhood, and just reread it as an adult and maybe learn more from it or understand more of what's going on, pick out some of the themes and more adult struggles that the characters are facing that maybe I didn't really understand when I was reading it as a kid. And yeah, there's so many children's books out there that are just timeless, and rereading them as an adult is really fun. Or even if it's a book that you haven't read before, and you want to read it now, I think you should go for it. So yeah, those are my tips. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you maybe take some of my recommendations, maybe put some of these tips into practice if you're interested in reading more classics. And yeah, please, if you have a favorite classic, especially if you think it's really accessible, please leave it in the comments. Or if you have any tips on ways that people can read more classics, it would be really fun to see what you all think. So thank you again for watching. I'll be back with another video, hopefully sooner than this last gap. But yeah, thanks again. Bye.